Oh, here we go. That's okay. All the content will be solid. Yeah. Okay. Some resonance in the group. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Hey, Canada. Nervous system support. I got that for you. That's where we'll start. So wherever you are, if you could just find yourself a bit more balanced in your posture. So that might mean sitting on both sits bones or putting both of your feet on the floor or taking your shoulders up to the same height. And feel into that shift, what that offers your breathing, your energy, your capacity to pay attention. And I'm going to bring you into a practice, a really basic yet profound practice called orienting. Just let your eyes go where they want to go. Let your eyes scan your space. And if you notice that there is a bit of anxiety induced in that practice or that ask to just look around your space, I encourage you to focus on the movement of your neck. So just think about moving your head in a way that gives your neck a little bit of a stretch, keeping your eyes open while you do that, and then your eyes may start to participate in a more receptive way. Yeah. Just let your eyes go where they want to go and see if they land on anything. Something that might capture your attention or draw you in for some more subtle reason. When you find yourself connected to something visually, just let your eyes close and notice the experience inside. Notice what has been activated in you, what has been evoked. It doesn't have to be something comfortable. It's more about coming into contact with what is alive in you in this moment. As you settle your attention there, become aware of the fact of whatever it is you're sitting on as a source of support. Even more than that, a source of unconditional support. You don't have to do anything to earn that support from the floor, from your chair, from the couch. Notice if that shifts anything for you in terms of your body, in terms of your attention, in terms of your feeling about being here. Your eyes may be closed, they may open, whichever feels more amenable to you, staying present. Come into contact really with your sense of touch. And it might start with whatever it is you're sitting on, or maybe you're until now absent-mindedly rubbing something between your fingers or holding something. So let your attention settle on that sense of touch. Be into relationship with that sense. Self to be guided toward what's good about it, what's pleasurable. And if that's not your experience in this moment, what's not wrong about it? Seeing if there's any emotion evoked there or an image. Allowing yourself to come into contact now with what you're hearing besides my voice. Like opening up your subtle listening. Without making a judgment about whether it's good or bad or you like it or not. Just notice how you're affected by what you're hearing or not hearing. How it affects your body, your posture, your breathing. Lastly, come into contact with your sense of smell. Might be really, really subtle, especially if you're in your own home. We don't necessarily notice the smells of our own space. Maybe there is something present that you can pick up and what that does for your system, how you're affected by that. Then silently to yourself or out loud because you're muted. So if you're alone in your space, only you will hear it. I invite you to just complete the following 3 sentences. I'm going to give you the start, a prompt of a sentence, and without censoring yourself, just fill in the blank. The first phrase is, I sense. Just fill in the blank. What do you sense in this moment? The next phrase is, I feel. Feeling being connected to the emotional body. Lastly, I imagine. What is alive in your imagination? Images, words. I imagine. Take a few long, slow, deep breaths for yourself. And as you start to open your eyes again, if they have been closed, I encourage you to reorient. Again, just let your eyes go where they want to go, to take in the space around you, to notice what they notice. Just how things have changed. Practice called orienting, I added on. In somatic experiencing, it's typically just visual. We're orienting through that visual channel. But as we engage more of our sensory body, it's an opportunity to become aware of where we are more or less connected generally. What channels of operation are more or less primed for taking in information. And why this is important is because our nervous system is actually functioning in all of these channels. But if we're not attuned to certain channels, one tends to become dominant and usually overactive, and is often a good indicator of where we're out of balance. Now, something important to say there too, whatever sense, whatever channel of our sensory functioning has become overly primed, overly attuned, and for most of us, it's the mind, it's thinking. It's often because that is what kept us alive during a very difficult time. The other channels were less functional or even dangerous. So wherever you are overly functional, you can thank that part of you for getting you to this point where you are now. Just notice how you're affected even by that acknowledgement of your system and the way it's worked for you for so long. And can you make that shift for yourself that this has worked for me because I'm still here? As this relates to our work today with the Dark Mother is this archetype connected to the shadow of our being, those parts of ourself that have been rejected or suppressed for one of many reasons. It's a cultural thing because we're afraid of it. We don't have the capacity for it because it was punished, but is nevertheless an essential part of us. And the more we have access to more of ourselves, the more we feel like ourselves. The more we have access to more of ourselves, the more choices we have. in any given circumstance. So there's nothing wrong with you. There are simply aspects of yourself that for good reason are not as primed to participate. And that's part of this work. First, holding a compassionate stance for what is so. And that might be one of the hardest adjustments for most of us to make. Just notice for yourself how that resonates for you. To what degree is it difficult for you to hold a compassionate stance toward yourself and your own adaptive behaviors? And is that your voice that is critical or someone else's? Because that could be a really quick uncoupling that happens there. Oh, that's not even my fucking voice. I love myself. I was just punished for this for so long that I put it away. Feel free to type into the chat as we go along anything that comes up for you. I might not catch it in the moment, but know that you're welcome to share, to be seen. Part of this work is informed by depth psychology. So working with the concept of the shadow, which is not exclusive to depth psychology, but is certainly deeply rooted in that philosophy. The shadow, as I said, being these parts of ourselves that have been cast out. And there's a wonderful book called Stories from the Motherline. And she writes, traits that we deny and repress in ourselves and dislike intensely in others are usually parts of our own shadow. That part I think is important to hold on to. Things that we intensely dislike in others are often part of our shadow. What becomes so activating about another person's behavior is often a thing we haven't acknowledged or integrated about ourselves, or are not willing to accept that are parts of ourselves. We cut off our natural energy flow when we disown our envy, rage, competitiveness, pettiness, and sensuality. Consider these traits that are often part of the shadow: envy, rage, competitiveness, pettiness, and sensuality. Our willingness to feel deeply. And I love this association, the acknowledgement, you're cutting off life force when you cut off any part of your life force. So when you become a mother, what is your primary currency? Life force, the energy to just get up and do what is required. And if there's any part of us that we've been taught to believe is not allowed, unappreciated, inappropriate, unwelcome, it's a restriction of the life force that we might have access to. And in the tradition that I'm a part of, the yoga tradition, this understanding of prana or life force, you can't diminish parts of it. It's all one thing. So rage is part of your joy. Grief is part of your gratitude. Imagination is part of your presence and your focus. But how many of you were told to stop daydreaming, to not be so distracted, to put your focus where it's supposed to be, to stop thinking about that other thing? As we grow into adults with far more restrictions on our time and energy and responsibilities to other people, all these aspects of self that we've been fighting and suppressing for so long, we're so desperate for life force that they just come roaring in, whether or not we've invited them. For how many of you is the experience of either, because I know not everyone in this group is a mother with children, so your experience of becoming a mother, your experience of transitioning something quite difficult in your life, a major life change or initiation. this feeling of, at least for a time, being totally out of control, that loss of control over your body function, over your mind, over your emotions. Well, now you know there's nothing wrong with you. That makes all the sense in the world. When in order to stay alive, you need every drop of that life force that's available, even if it's quite ugly. I'm going to share something with you that I had not planned on sharing. So give me a second to find it, but it feels pertinent to what we're talking about now. Let me see if I can find this. And again, feel free to type into the chat to share your thoughts. I won't do the whole slideshow because I don't need to. Who likes animals? Gonna look at some animal pictures. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. Can you all see those animals? Let's see. Can you see the elephants? Okay. So jumped ahead. Here we are. Beautiful herd of elephants, a matriarchal culture. They are. They form circles around birthing mothers. Like, can you feel that in your body? This energy? There's that. And there's also, oh, did it stop for you all? Screen sharing? Let's see. There's also this. Get the fuck away from me and my family. This is a survival energy. There is a polarity required by our life force. My capacity to stay present and be deeply engaged and give of myself is intimately connected to my ability to kill, to attack, to fight, to run away. They're not separate. And what we have all been fed and have come to believe about ourselves is that only one type of life force energy is acceptable. But as we start to live our life and live a life that becomes increasingly complex, there's this complete and total disorientation because that's not enough. Being nice isn't enough. Being a good girl isn't enough. Being generous and selfless isn't enough. In fact, it's killing me. In the tradition of depth psychology, it's shadow and soul. You don't get to full soul expression or even experience without the shadow. Your soul is your reason for being here in a body on this planet at this time in these given circumstances. Your soul is the force that animates everything in your life. It's the feeling of yes, it's the feeling of no. It's the call to keep going, to put one foot in front of the other. And that soul, in order to survive, requires all of it. How could we survive with no fight instinct? How could we survive with no instinct to run away and escape? How could we survive with no instinct to shape ourselves to whatever is required, but not at the request or insistence of someone else, but because it is in service of our life, right? Those are two separate things. To shape yourself and adapt to a situation that is toxic to you is not the same as shaping yourself and adapting so that your soul can continue flourishing. I know I'm not giving concrete examples. Firstly, that's not exactly how I teach. Second, I don't think that's entirely helpful for the work that we're doing, which is connected to soul, which is what is happening in your own body. What is the instinct in you that's coming alive? What is the image forming in your mind? I can't feed you an image and tell you this is what you should want. That's the abuse of our culture. So notice what is happening in you, what is being evoked. And again, as we started with our practice, if there's a sense, I don't know, that would make a tremendous amount of sense because you've been trained to not know. Resmi, can you say more about that? If you want to come off mute, you can also type into the chat. I'm not sure I understand your comment there.
Oh, just you said about how you're not giving us examples, but like you were saying something about like being like a good girl or being nice is not enough sometimes. And for me, like maybe like past experiences kind of come into my head and where that happened where me being nice or me being trying to be there for somebody wasn't enough, so I had to be more a little bit stand my ground and a little bit more like assertive. And sometimes people don't like that or they take offense to that, and it's like, well, I tried being nice to you and this is me just standing my ground so that I don't get hurt.
Yeah, and something that you're saying in there is really powerful because this quality of, I'm going to mute you, Esme, because I think there's a little bit of echo. This quality of acting in a certain way because we think that's what's expected of us, we're actually contributing to the muddy waters in that scenario. So often conflict erupts or occurs because there's like something off, right? You're not, suddenly you stand your ground and it's like, but wait, that's not who you told me you were. You made me believe you were someone who was going to do whatever I said, right? So when it's not, and in that scenario, in that equation, it's like the only option is to be totally nice and passive or aggressive and rude. There are millions of shades in between those two. And having access to all of it is a function of having access to all of ourself and that feeling of knowing when it's appropriate to apply which energy, like how to show up fully in the moment and what is being asked, right? I know there's some stuff going on in the chat, so I'm going to go over there. Jessica says, I often associate rage with my mother. When I feel frustrated in my experience of motherhood and anger starts to surface, I feel so much shame because I know the hurt caused me as a child. So I find I'm often labeling it bad or don't allow that. Yes. Yes. This experience of suppressed or repressed emotion is intergenerational. We learn it And then this experience of it sort of like oozing out or exploding out of us, I believe is a portal to the transformation of the pattern. We get to have the reference point of our mother or our grandmother or our father, for that matter. Like, takes a tremendous amount of willingness to feel the anger or feel the resentment towards them, and also feel the compassion for what they didn't have, for what they weren't allowed to say, and to take responsibility for what is our job to do now, which is to say something, to feel the feelings and express them in a way that is coherent. It's not light work by any means. And I don't mean to over intellectualize it either. But projection is usually a part of the shadow, right? We associate certain qualities as bad or wrong because we've worked so hard to suppress them in ourselves. And that's really a strong component of mothering. The things that our mothers did do or didn't do that we're going to do differently, that create a kind of imbalance in us just showing up authentically and meeting life as it comes, because we've decided getting angry is bad. Being, overwhelmed or resentful is bad. Without allowing ourselves to fully feel the fact, like, wow, I hate this sometimes. That gives me a lot of compassion. And how do I shift my behavior, because I don't want to be like this inside my family? Something has got to shift. Where is this coming from? Right? It's a much deeper conversation. And I'll share, I want to get into a little bit of movement and some writing practice. This is why I'm teaching a 6-week course, because I can just go and go. There's a lot to dig into here. I heard a lot. I took a poll on Instagram. What is the shadow in your mothering? And by and large, the response, everyone responded to different things. I put rage and shame and grief and resentment by and large was the shadow that most women experience. And I found that interesting. And resentment, the definition of resentment, first of all, I love this. And every definition I could find, it's a complex emotional experience. It's a complex emotion, but it's caused by a perception of imbalance, right? I'm doing more than they are. Shoulds versus wants, feeling the pressure of I should be doing this versus what do I actually want? Avoidance of conflict, expectations that usually, and for both avoidance of conflict and expectations, those things are unspoken, right? We're not saying the thing out loud, and being disconnected from your life. So when I read that, and I'm reading this in the context of motherhood, early motherhood, and arguably all of motherhood, is a disconnection from your life. It's not your life to mother. Many weeks ago, I shared a post that got a lot of attention. Motherhood is not about your kids. It's about you. It's about how you can find yourself in this experience of mothering and find yourself connected to the part of you that is mother and your soul that has a very clear through line in this life that does not end in motherhood. I'm certain each of you who is a mother, you find tremendous purpose and satisfaction in mothering. If those are not your words, I do. I'll speak for myself. But that is not why I'm here on this planet. That's not my sole purpose. I don't know about you, but I feel a little like queasy saying it, right? That's not what I should say. Doesn't that make me sound ungrateful or selfish? And I'm certain each of you is saying no. But I know you felt that about yourself for wanting something else. and also wanting another baby. It's complicated. And your complexity requires compassion and intimate connection with your shadow. That these things exist in you so that you can see them, soften them, integrate them, and live your whole self. I'm going to read one quote from Women Who Run with the Wolves, because that is the Bible for the Dark Mother. The way to maintain one's connection to the wild is to ask yourself, what is it that you want? This is the sorting of the seed from the dirt. One of the most important discriminations we can make in this matter is the difference between things that beckon us and things that call from our soul. Very subtle distinction. Things that beckon us, things that call for our attention, and things that call from our soul. If there's no relationship to what is deeply moving inside of you, the call of your soul will remain elusive. And deep inside of you is resentment, is rage, is hatred, is anger, is lust, is greed, is envy, is joy, is vulnerability, is desire, is ecstasy. It's all there. You can't just pick the piece that is easy. So let's all take a few deep breaths. Notice how you're affected, body, breath, emotions, thoughts. And give yourself the respect and dignity to bear witness to that instead of deciding it's right or wrong. I see some of you very naturally orienting, some of you going inside. Where you are, just see if you can find that balance between internal awareness and external awareness. The external awareness, noticing where we are in time and space, is like a bit of a tether, ensuring that we don't go too deep to a place where we do get overwhelmed and swept up in things that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar. The external awareness is a way of staying in a safe enough relationship with what has been unknown to us until now. Really important. So if you're in a chair, I'm just going to offer the possibility of at least sitting on the edge of it, if not shifting to another kind of seat where there aren't any arm restrictions. You could sit on the floor. Hi, Jessica. It's you, Jessica. I know you. Yeah, it's mutual. Oh, feel your feet on the ground. If you're seated like with your legs tucked under you, that's fine, but maybe bring your hands to your thighs and just move your feet a little bit. It's your toes and your ankles. And then take a few breaths, establishing your sense in yourself in an upright posture without forcing sort of a perfect posture. Just feel your spine reaching into the ground through your tailbone, the downward point of your sacrum. Then soften your belly and see if you can feel into the S curve of your spine. Soft belly, allowing your low back to pull gently in. Soft shoulders, allowing your mid back to curve gently out. Soft jaw, allowing your neck to be supple and mobile. Soft forehead, allowing your skull to be soft. Take your hands up now so your palms are facing out and hands are about shoulder height. Let out a nice sigh. And as you do so, make fists with your hands. Just notice if that changes your breath or the sound at all. Inhale, open your palms. Let out a sigh. Bring your hands into fists and squeeze a little harder this time without clenching your jaw or your shoulders. One more time like this. Inhale, open your hands. Let out an audible sigh and squeeze your hands into fists. Keep your hands in fists now. You can watch me first. We're going to do this 3 times. Inhale, reach the arms up. Just watch me first. With your exhale, you're going to pull your elbows down and back and say, ha! If you can't, ha, right now for any reason, exhale really hard. So make it more breath than sound. If you can make sound, make some sound. Inhale. Ha! Ha! And then bring your hands together. Thumb tips touching, fingertips touching, making a triangle, and press your hands straight out from your heart. Gaze through the space between your fingers. Press through the palms of your hands. And inhale long and slow through your nose. Exhale long and slow through your mouth. Eyes soft and open. After that last breath, go ahead and relax your arms. Rest your hands, palms face up on your lap, or if you're seated at a desk, on the desk, if that feels good. Let your eyes close. Feel into the sensations present in your body, maybe heat, maybe buzzing. Let your eyes stay closed as long as that feels safe for you, or find a soft point to focus on that isn't distracting. It's going to bring you into an imaginal practice, imagining yourself walking into an outdoor amphitheater. Maybe you're somewhere ancient, the seats made of stone. The earth is the floor. And in the center of this amphitheater is a fire pit. You can see that the fire pit is empty, and yet somehow you notice hot blue flames starting to appear. You find yourself compelled towards the fire pit, feeling the heat as you step a few steps closer. It doesn't burn, but envelops you in its warmth. The flames slowly grow taller and taller and taller until they're taller than you are. Find yourself looking up, and somehow these flames start to take the shape of a woman. Her skin is dark blue, almost black, but luminous like the moon. Her hair is black and moves like the flames. It trails all the way down to her ankles. And her eyes look straight into you. Her tongue falls out of her mouth, dripping with blood, but there's nothing terrifying about it. She smiles at you. She's full of life. Suddenly, it is as though you are in the flames with her. You hear her whisper to you, "What do you want? What do you want? What do you want?" Allow yourself to feel every feeling that comes with the question. And when you're ready, I invite you to take your pen in the hand that you normally do not write with and write your answer. Take your pen in the hand you normally do not write with and write your answer, letting her answer through you. Let it feel awkward. Let yourself write from feeling. We'll write for about 4 minutes. Allow for the possibility of having to bypass your mind. Just keep writing. Just keep moving your pen. Take about 1 more minute. And as you start to bring your writing to a close, just feel into any final message or wisdom from the goddess, from the Dark Mother, that you would like to remember. What is her final message to you? When you feel complete, go ahead and put down your pen. You might close your notebook. Reorient. My witnessing of each of you through these little Zoom squares leads me to believe that that was an evocative practice for most of you. I'd love to hear from you, whether you unmute yourself, feel comfortable sharing that way, or want to type something into the chat. What was that like for you? You don't have to share what you wrote necessarily, but just what was that like for you? Did anything? Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
I felt like a big hesitation to even naming what it was that I wanted. You know, it was like very hard to sense anything at first. But then when I finally got it, it was like almost explosive. And I was like, okay, my left hand does not write
Can't keep up.
as quickly as I'm having these ideas. And so it was nice to be forced to be slow with it and really feel it, because I don't think I often let myself do that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing with us. Anybody else? Go ahead, Michelle.
I was frustrated because my kids were fighting right before I felt like, as you were describing the goddess, but I came in and you were saying the 3 times, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And that felt really, I felt like it added gravity to myself, which I think has been so unformed or whatever. And I think I had some things that were like really broad of what I wanted and some things that were specific, and but it just feels vulnerable. Wants feel vulnerable, and so yeah, I could relate to that, or just yeah, just even daring to say it. So yeah.
Daring to say it. That might be the name of my next class, Michelle. Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I saw you get up and I was like, oh, of course. Sarah, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I unmuted. I felt I was surprised by the wave of emotion just by naming it.
Yeah.
What I want, or yeah, so the vulnerability.
It's very vulnerable because there, and this is what I was naming about the shadow, right? It's unknown even to us. And to think that some of our desires are enmeshed with the shadow, the things that we subconsciously or consciously believe are unacceptable, is, I think, a really potent awareness, and what makes practices like this really necessary, to give time, to give space, to ask the question, to go beyond the initial hesitation or the assumption there's nothing there. Quite powerful. As me shared, this was a bit easier for me because I've been incorporating into my practice and working with Colleen. Nice. Felt really good to know what I want and keeping it. That's beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of potency there. This practice, by the way, is inspired by a meditation I learned from Sally Kempton that I adapted subtly for us here. So I want to give credit where credit is due. Anything else before we close? Just going to invite you one last time into your self-awareness. You might do that by shifting your posture or taking a deep breath, placing your hands somewhere on your body where it feels good to be touched. Allow yourself to name internally or out loud, if you wish, the piece of this time that you've given yourself that feels most alive, that feels like a gift, the piece that feels like a lift for you. Offer my deep gratitude to each of you for showing up live, for being here together, and for creating this space. For space to be held has to be substantial. So bringing your substance and hearts and wisdom to this space, I'm really grateful. And for those of you who will watch this recording later, I'm so grateful for each of you too. Officially close this time together and I'll hang out for any questions or comments that you want to share off the recording.